The Digg Podcast is back. I am your host, Caroline O'Neill, and it's an absolute honour and a privilege to bring you some of the most inspirational stories and guests on the Digg Podcast. And not only are they inspirational, but they're also actionable, which is probably most important. We want to be able to take small steps every day in our businesses and in our lives to improve things, to make things better, to de-stress when it comes to thinking about our working life. Will that ever happen? I don't know. But we need to believe that listening to people who have been through it all, walked the walk, and are able to share their experiences will help us. And I absolutely believe that. Also, you might notice a different feel to the podcast, and that's because in the past I have traditionally allowed businesses and brands to pitch to you guys in the middle of the podcast. So that was their way of giving all the best bits about their business and a great way to advertise for them. But I feel now like it's my time to let you guys know what I've been using, both products and businesses that have helped me be a better person. And I always say you can't separate normal life from business life. What makes you a better person makes you a better business person. So you're going to find a mix of everything. You'll probably hear me talking about things that I enjoy with my family, things that I personally enjoy and use, and also businesses and products that are making my business better as well. So a total mix, but hand on heart recommendations from me to you that I know is going to help you as well. And that's what it's all about. Giving real life honest reviews. So very exciting for the podcast. Delighted to have all the businesses involved that are on the journey ahead with me. And yes, for now, buckle up and get ready for a great jam-packed episode that is going to help you become more efficient in your business. Today on the Digg Podcast, you're going to be able to take action and change your business. I just know it. We are speaking to Amy Stevenson-Smith, and Amy is a virtual assistant. Now, when I heard about a virtual assistant, I was like, that's not going to be any good to me because I'm just so busy. I wouldn't even have time to tell a virtual assistant. And how would a virtual assistant know anything about me and my work and my job? And how could they help me? And I had all these mental blocks to anybody helping me, and still do a little, but Amy has helped me through it. But her strapline is she gives you less to-dos and more ta-da. And whenever I was reading that on her socials, I was like, oh my goodness, that's exactly what Amy does. Because I did then get past the mental block of having someone in my life like Amy. And when I do employ her services, because Amy works on like a freelance basis, honestly, the stress that has been lifted off my life, my working life and my home life, because then I'm not as stressed at home because things are getting done, is unbelievable. So I said, right, I need to bring Amy on the podcast so she can tell you, first of all, things that you can do to make your working life less stressful, and also then what Amy can do for you if you were going to, or any virtual assistant really, because there's only one Amy. She absolutely can't help everybody on the Digg Podcast, but she's going to give you tips and tricks you can do yourself. And she's taught me a lot too. So I said, would you come on to the podcast and just share your actionable tips? So get ready, get your pen and paper ready. If you're out walking, we're going to do show notes for this podcast. So we'll have all the notes and all attached and any good links that Amy gives us or advice. But yeah, we're just going to dive right in. So thank you for being on the Digg Podcast, Amy.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness. No, so I was delighted because everything you've taught me, like about systems and processes and being more efficient. And even though I've employed your services, you've also taught me things that has helped me so much in my business. So I know you're going to help the audience so much. So people are so busy, Amy. Like I was reading through your social media and you had a quote up and I've written it down here. If you're too busy to build good systems, then you'll always be too busy.
Yes, 100%.
I said, that's so true, because you think, oh, I'm too busy, but then you never get any less busy because you don't take the time. So that one, and then there was another one, stop checking your emails as they come in. Yes. And I said, oh my God, that's a brilliant one. But anyway, look, I'm not going to I want you to do the talking because you're the expert. So tell us a wee bit about what you do first, Amy, for people, and then we'll dive into some actionable tips.
Yeah. So virtual assistant is a very generic term. I've had lots of funny conversations over the years with people trying to work out what it is I actually do. So a virtual assistant really is just a remote freelancer that works on admin tasks. So they're remote, they're not based in your business, they're freelance, they're not an employee, and the tasks they do are usually of an administrative nature. So there are VAs for everything and anyone. Very, very specific. If you're a mechanic, there's a VA that only works with mechanics. If you're looking for SEO, there's a VA that only works in SEO. There is somebody for everyone. So for me, I predominantly work in systems and marketing support.
Okay, a virtual assistant for a mechanic, if there's any
Yes.
listening. So and I know we're probably skipping on, but how do you find out where all these virtual assistants are?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that as well, but like the basic sort of thing to do is, if they are people in your industry already using virtual assistants, recommendations are a really, really good place to start, because you know that the VAs then are trusted, and they are already working with your type of business. So that's a really good place to start and get a sort of a peer-to-peer recommendation. And the other place would then be the Society of Virtual Assistants. So unfortunately, virtual assisting is not a regulated trade. Anybody can do it. Anyone can open their laptop and say they're a VA. But the Society of Virtual Assistants is as close to a regulatory body as we have. So on their website, they have a list of approved VAs. And what that means is that they have met a basic set of business requirements in order to be on that list. Now, it's things like having insurance, being registered for GDPR, having policies in place, all of the things that you think are basic business requirements, but unfortunately there are people out there that don't have that. So the approved listings is a really good place to start, because if you're bringing somebody into your business, you want to ensure that they treat their business as seriously as they're going to treat yours.
Absolutely. And that's definitely what you've done with mine. Like anytime I have to let you log into my systems and stuff, you've all offering to sign NDAs and contracts and all of that there. So you are very professional when it comes to that. So we will cover that, I suppose, at the end as well, about people who want to find out more about that. But let's start. So everybody that's listening are flat to the mat, Amy. Don't have time to tell you hardly what they need you to do. And I think that's isn't that the first thing that people need to overcome? They actually can't believe that you could get into their head. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so you have to take a step back in order to take a step forward, is what I always say to people. Help me to help you. You need to take the time to create your processes and see what it is you're actually doing and what it is you don't want to be doing anymore and what you're going to outsource. So the first tip I always give people is to map out your processes. So whether you map them out in pen and paper, whether you do it digitally, however works best for you. I'm a pen and paper girl myself. I like to map everything out. And I would say map out your process that you do from point A to point B, everything that you do from the moment you take on a new client to you deliver the service. And be really honest with yourself, because there's things that you do on autopilot that you'll have forgotten you do. You think of like the headline things that you do throughout a process, but there's little bits in between. And generally it's those little bits that are the bits that are taking up your time.
Like what?
Like sending a little email here, or you maybe go and grab a link from somewhere else and send it, or you maybe make a phone call, all of those things that you do on repeat every time you have a client, that you just do it on autopilot, but you need to map that all out. So be really honest and be like, this is from the moment I get this inquiry, this is the steps I take the whole way through. And once you have that mapped out, then it's much easier to be able to say, can anything be removed? So I worked with a big manufacturing company last year, which is slightly different because they had lots of teams. And when we got every team to map out their process, we realized that there were 2 team members doing the same thing in 2 different departments, and they hadn't even realized, because they were sort of so siloed in their own department and their own process. So it's a little bit different if you're a small business, but it is very good to map it out and say, like, is there anything I'm doing here which I don't really need to be doing? Or is there anything I'm doing that could be combined? So maybe you send multiple emails with different bits of information. Could they be all put together and it just be one email at a certain point in your process? Seeing it visually makes it much easier to make those decisions, and notice where those bottlenecks are in your process.
So are you talking about, like, so say at the first stage of an inquiry, and then that's one part of your work, and then when a new client comes on, there's another process that goes on there. Is it break it down as many times as that? Okay.
Yeah, break it right down, because you do so much that you don't even realize you do. And seeing it sort of all listed out makes it much easier to make decisions about what's going on in your business. And then, so once you've sort of removed everything or amalgamated anything that can be combined, then we would look at what can be automated. And so people sort of get a little bit panicky when I talk about automation, and they think like they need these big fancy systems that are going to cost them all their money. and take away that personal element. That's generally one of the sort of the big objections people have with automation, is it's not personal anymore. I like to chat to my customers and things like that. And that's not the case. You can automate in ways that are still personable. And actually, I would argue it helps you enhance your customer experience, because it makes everything much easier from both sides. Everybody's aware of what their roles and responsibilities are and what they need to bring to this partnership, because essentially it's a partnership when you're working with people, and it just makes it much easier then for you to spend time being that higher level, given that higher level of customer service and that higher touch. So I think it's a pro, not a con, in terms of automating. So there are several
type of things. Sorry for jumping in, but what my mind's going mental here. Like, what could I be automating? Like, what type of things do people automate? Like,
okay.
what?
So the easiest places to automate, this is really based as a service provider. This example is much easier to sort of give. So the best places to automate are contracts. So if you send out contracts, if you are sending them out and expecting somebody to print them out, sign them, scan them back in, send them back, you could have quite a big delay between sending that contract and getting it back, which then sort of holds off maybe you getting paid or starting the next part of a project. So automating contract signatures is a really easy one you can do. There's lots of free systems out there for doing this as well. It means that you can just send your contract out. They literally can click it as soon as they open the email and give you an e-signature immediately. You'll both get the copy of the signed completed contract, so you're not having to do that as well. Like, that's all done in one go. So that's a really easy one to start with.
Can you tell us, is it okay to tell us what would the program be that would do that if there's people listening?
Yeah, so there's a few free ones. So there's Hello Sign, there's Docu Sign, there's EverSign, there's PandaDoc. There is a million of them out there. It just depends on really what you like, the features of it you need. Most of them have up to 5 contracts a month for free, and then you'd have to move on to paid plans. So it depends how many contracts you're sending, what's going to be the best option for you there. But there are loads.
Okay, good. Okay, right. Keep going. This is great stuff.
So the next place I'd say looking at automating is invoices. So we're obviously in an era now where we're moving towards making tax digital, and people are getting more on board with using things like Xero, QuickBooks, FreshBooks, things like that. So putting your invoices in there and sending them out where people can pay at the click of a button also makes that a much quicker process to get paid, and makes it much easier for the customer. So again, you're enhancing that customer experience. And also it means that you can set up recurring payments. So if you're a social media manager, for example, that works on retainer, you can set that up to be going out every month and you don't need to think about it.
Yeah, so like, I'm nodding away here, and I still don't have that set up. I use Invoice to go at the moment. I'm in the process of switching to Xero, but I still don't have it where they can click and pay, just because, and I'm just going to say it out loud, I haven't had the time to, and I'm sure it's very easy to like go into settings and do, but I'm like, yes. I must do that. So basically, if you were employed in someone's works, if someone took on your services, you could go in and get that all set up where it's recurring payments or whatever. However, if you don't employ the services of a virtual assistant, that's something you really should take control of, because as you said, you get paid quicker. You don't have to worry about resending the invoice every month, and that's just one less task for you to do. So, but I think, Amy, isn't it mindset? It's about setting aside a time to sit down and just get that done. And then you do think better, but it's just, maybe this will be a reminder to people, if they do have those admin tasks to set up, to just do it. Yeah,
they tend to get pushed to the bottom of the to-do list and then get rolled onto the bottom of the next to-do list and rolled on and on and on. And I'm sort of the mindset that like, then they're constantly there niggling in the back of your mind. So if you can get them taken off, then that's one less thing to worry about. So it sounds a bit mean, but it's kind of a problem you're causing yourself.
I know. This
is the stress you're giving to yourself.
Describing me, and the way I just admitted that I'm in the process of moving to Xero, actually, and I'm just going to say it out loud, I'm paying Xero and Invoice to go at the minute, because I haven't moved everybody over and figured out all of that, just because I just haven't had time. But this is going to motivate me to just, because that's just ridiculous to be paying 2 subscriptions in a month of the same service. So you've motivated to do that for me. Anything else in mapping out your processes and that bit there that we should cover?
Yeah, so the other thing I'd say massively is a big thing for automating would be your bookings. For people booking in meetings with you, or you book in, like client catch-ups and things like that. The email ping pong, that back and forth, that is the biggest time suck ever.
Ever.
Yes, and it's not nice for either party. So again, this is where when you're saying, automating takes away that personal side of it, actually it's enhancing the customer experience again, because they can book in a time that's convenient for them, and that it's also convenient for you because you've said these are the times I'm available. So Google actually have brought out their own version of this now. So if you have a Google Workspace account, if you use Google Calendar, you now actually can set up appointments within there and share the link. So that's free, that's included in your Google, which...
Oh, I do use Google Calendar, but I didn't know. So here's what I do, and I'm sure 90% of, excuse me for including my audience in the same scatty mind that I have, but I would be like, right, I need to meet that person. When are they free? When are you free? Okay, here's the dates I'm free. Then they send back when they're free. Just what you just said. So basically you're saying if we use Google Calendar, can they view your whole calendar and just fit in around, or what way does it work?
So they can't view your whole calendar. You would set up predetermined slots. So in Google Calendar, create an appointment schedule, it's called, that's the terminology they use. And you would set up, like say a Monday morning, you're going to take client calls, or a different, whatever sort of time suit you, and then you can give them that link and they can book in within those parameters. So that's the Google one, but then you've also got things like Calendly, which a lot of people are familiar with now, and it's great. It allows you to attach questions as well. So when somebody's booking in, they kind of answered some questions beforehand, which can make it much easier for you to get stuck straight in, knowing what they're there to speak to you about. And also on the paid version of Calendly, you can integrate your payment processor and they can pay in advance. So if you do power hours or things like that, they can actually pick the time that suits them, give you the information you need, and have paid all before you've even really spoke to them.
Amy, seriously, this is like, I knew this existed. Like, I'm not, I am educated to know that these exist, but when you explain it like that, you're like the things that I be at, gone back and forth, and then checking did the pay and have the paid, and missing out on potential people because I just never got back to them and stuff. So if people are listening and they are doing that, then there is ways for you to do that yourself. But that's the thing you do, like virtual assistants do for people too? Is it like set all up and manage that for them?
Yeah, 100%. So sort of looking at all the things that you're doing and working out where that could be automated or improved, or a system could be brought in, is something virtual assistants like me do. But these are all things, there is nothing complex here. These are all things that you can take 15, 20 minutes and sit down and implement yourself. And your future self will thank you, I promise.
Your future self will thank you. Okay, everybody is like going, right, I'm going to take control of that. So, so I know we talked before about the topics that we were going to cover on the podcast. And the next one that you talked to me about, and that's kind of part of what we've just covered, is diary management.
Yes.
So talk to me about that.
Yeah. So I am a big believer in the electronic diary, having a digital diary, something like Google Calendar or Outlook, whatever you are most familiar with. A lot of people still have a paper diary, and a paper diary is totally fine to have, but I always believe it should be backed up digitally as well. Like for example, my dog groomer went on holidays to Spain and left her diary in Spain and had no idea who was coming and when, and it was a big panic. And I think a digital diary means it's always accessible, no matter where you are, who you're with, you can always sort of take a look at it. And if you lost your phone, you can still access it on your computer. It just makes life much easier, in my opinion. But what I will say about diary management is a diary is there to be managed, not filled. So white space is not evil. We like white space. White space gives us that flexibility when things just don't go the way we planned, which we know as humans tends to happen a lot. And if you have that white space in there, it allows you that little bit of leeway. So a diary is not there to be chock-a-block, like from Monday morning to Friday evening. And if it is, I would say that's when you need to start looking at what you're doing and whether you need to outsource or take on a team member. But yeah, it's there to be managed, not filled. That would be my...
So Google Calendar, I use Google Calendar, and honestly, I feel like sometimes I feel like I don't have a brain without it. I would know
I'm
who's
insane.
after you. I don't even know what's happening after I get off this call to you. So Google Calendar is life, and like you say, you can access it on all your devices or whatever. And if you haven't, like I even spoke to my hairdresser recently, and she still uses her book and all, and that's grand. But I was like, oh my goodness, Chloe, like Google Calendar. She's like, oh, I can't get my head around. I was like, no. Basically, it's just the app on your phone, and it's a calendar, and you type in. Now, I don't use it very well, as in I would need to sit down and look at all the different features of it. But if I get it in and the time's in, and that's how I use it in its basic level. But even the simple process of someone sending you a link for a Zoom and then it comes up on your Google Calendar, isn't that because your Google Calendar is linked to your email address? And then when they email you the link, is that why it comes up there on your Google Calendar?
Yeah, so you can integrate it. Yeah, and so you can integrate with Zoom, and you can integrate with Google Meet. And
why did I do that? I don't know. Mine is integrated, and it's amazing because people send you that link, and then it comes up on your Google Calendar without you doing anything. So absolutely, if anybody's not using Google Calendar, and it's a great resource, very cheap for your G Suite or whatever. But so what about, that's your diary management? What about your inbox? Like, let me just check what I'm sitting here talking to you. So,
don't, you're going to make me shudder.
So my inbox, I have 10,987 is the number that's on my inbox. Tell me, what would you do with me?
Right. So your inbox should work for you. It shouldn't cause you work, but unfortunately in most cases it does. I actually get regularly sent screenshots of that number of unread emails because people know how much I can't cope with it. So the first thing I would say to do is archive anything older than 12 months. So go in, scroll back through the pages and select all for everything that's older than 12 months and put it in a new folder that you've called archive or old or whatever you want to have named it.
Wow, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, the reason I said to do that rather than delete is people are always obviously nervous of deleting. There might be something in amongst your 10,000 emails. There might be something you might need at some point. So it just makes it a little bit easier if you've just moved them out of your main inbox into somewhere, so that if you do need to find something again, they are still there, they are still searchable, and you can get it. But what it does is takes that all out of your main inbox and just makes that a little bit easier to deal with and manage. And it's a little dopamine hit too, to feel like you've gone from 10,000 to a few hundred. So that would be the first thing I would say to do. And then I would suggest to create subfolders. Now, I will say do not create too many, because there is this sort of false productivity thing that people do where they create loads of folders and they spend all their time moving emails into different folders to get inbox zero. But really all they've done is move things around. They haven't actually actioned anything or, moved the needle forward. They've just moved things around. So if you think in your house, a good example is like if you buy all these lovely storage boxes and you organize all your junk, it's nicely organized, but it's still not decluttered. So there's a difference between organizing and decluttering. And it's the same with your inbox. So create a few subfolders that work for you. Some people like, in progress, done, actioned. Some people like clients, my business, whatever way works for you. You have to think what way your brain works, what those folders would be named. And then I tell everybody to follow the 4D rule. So the 4D rule is do, defer, delegate, and delete. So if an email comes in and you can action it in 2 minutes or less, do it. Just get it done. It's done. If it comes in and it's going to take more time to do, or you need to go away and find a bit of information, or you need to confer with a colleague or something like that, defer it. So set yourself a reminder, use the flags in your email system, and give yourself like a due date to come back to that.
Okay, I've never done that in my life. I've never set a flag on an email. I mean, I didn't know that was like a thing.
Yes, well, it's going to be a thing now.
So you put a flag and you can put a time on that to tell you, to remind you. Okay.
Yeah. Follow up in 3 days or whatever it may be. Then delegate. So if the email is not for you, if it's for somebody on your team, whether that's an outsourced team or an in-house team, forward it on, get it off your to-do list and onto theirs. You can also do a lovely thing in Google Mail where you can mute a CC'd email thread. So if somebody CC'd you on an email thread, but you literally, like, there's nothing in it for you, it's just the CC'd you for your information, you can mute the thread so it's not constantly clogging up your inbox as well. And then the last one is delete. So you find whenever I do an inbox cleanse on anybody's inbox, you find all these emails where people have come back and said, that's great, thank you, or, okay, or we don't need to keep those, delete them. If there's nothing in that email that you're ever going to need to refer back to, or need again, just delete it. Like, there's no sense.
I'd be afraid to do that. You know why I'd be afraid to do that? I'd be afraid to do that in case it's on a thread and you need the information that's previous to that, them saying thank you.
But you have the original, you have those first emails. So if you had an email come in with somebody like asked you to do certain work or whatever, and you filed that in their client subfolder or wherever you filed that, their email coming back to you to say, okay, thanks. When you delete that, doesn't delete the original.
Oh, right.
First.
Okay.
Yeah. So delete anything that you won't ever need to refer back to. So do, defer, delegate, and delete.
So today's episode is brought to you by Wild and Free. And Wild and Free is like an Irish outdoor brand, and it's all about encouraging you to just get outdoors, and it's just good for your mind and your overall well-being. And I honestly have found that I have started to, life's so busy with work, and all I want to do, I'm doing all this for my family, but at the weekends I just want to spend time with them, and we get outdoors, we get off the devices. But I want the kids to enjoy being outdoors with us, with me and Jared. So we have been going on day trips, we've been having staycations, and we've been wearing this lovely brand called Wild and Free. And Wild and Free was actually founded by Aisling and Robbie, who have 3 kids, just like me, and they wanted to just switch off from work, and life is hectic, and they decided they want to get outdoors more, just like us, and they wanted to be wearing clothes that were easy and, still felt stylish but functional, and that's exactly when Wild and Free was born. It's like effortless and timeless. It's lovely hoodies and t-shirts and beanies and backpacks, and they also have this great part of their range called the cobe, so it's like the coat and the robe. Now, I am not a sea swimmer, so I don't wear it for that, but like nighttime walks when it's getting chilly. I haven't worked to the football matches yet with the kids, but it would be great for that. School runs. But then also Jared loves to sea swim, so he could throw his on when he comes out of the sea, as do the kids. So the cobe is definitely an investment piece when you consider how many times you're going to wear it. But it's like a unisex range, so I have a hoodie, Jared has the round neck jumper, the kids have the cobes. It's just lovely, and it's easy to wear. If you have to go out on a head out for dinner, you can still wear your hoodies and still feel like stylish. So I've been loving it, we've been loving it, and the team at Wild and Free have said they'll give everyone who listens to the Digg podcast an exclusive discount if they enter Digg15. So you'll see me wearing it on my socials anyway if you're over there. And live your life wild and free is their motto, and that's what I intend to do. Follow them on Instagram at Wild and Free Outdoor and join the Wild Tribe community. Now it's back to the Digg podcast. And you do inbox cleansing.
I call it juicing for your inbox.
Juicing for your inbox. Oh my God, I love it. And this is because actually it can be mentally draining to see that amount of emails. It's like a mindset thing again, where you're like, you don't even want to tackle it then, and it just minds up. Yeah. So that's unbelievable. But if people want to do this themselves, that's a really good. And I think if you can do it in, did you say 2 minutes? Then do it. That's a really good tip.
Yeah.
Do you know what I did too? I took a half hour one day. I was actually so proud of myself, because it actually gave me so much relief, and unsubscribed from loads of things. And I thought that was going to be really hard to do, but it's so easy. And it makes you feel like you're not that busy when you look at the actual real emails coming through. But when you open up, there's all these new ones. But I would advise anybody too, and here I'm no expert, Amy's the expert, but taking 20 minutes and just unsubscribing to all those people you've signed up to that are not relevant, and you don't want that information anymore.
And a tip to do that is to search the word unsubscribe in your inbox, because legally any newsletter or, like mailing list that you're on has to have a little bit of text along the bottom that says, you signed up to our mailing list because you've bought from us or whatever. If you wish to unsubscribe, click here. So if you search the word unsubscribe, that will bring up all of those emails that contain that. So it's much easier to work your way through then.
Here, you see, I didn't do that. I was like scrolling through each page and going, right, you need to leave. So that's a really good tip too.
Yeah. Okay. And newsletters aren't, they aren't bad. There's some newsletters you want to be on, but you maybe haven't got a chance to even read them because of all of the other sort of stuff clogging up your inbox. But you can set up rules in your inbox. So you can say, every time an email comes in from this email address, put it in this folder. So I have a newsletters folder. And all the newsletters I want to receive go directly into that. So they don't even come in my main inbox. It doesn't clog it up. But whenever I have a little bit of time, I can then go in and read through the ones that I actually want to read through.
No, that is genius. Like people. So yeah. So if you were doing it, people could just hire you and say, look, Amy, I just want you to do the inbox or the inbox cleanse.
Yes.
That's like it. Wow. Okay. Be prepared now. You're going to be after this. Okay. So now we're going to talk about task management. So talk to me about that.
So this is your to-do list. So
that
little scrap of paper, that post-it note that you've lost, that's your to-do list. So to-do lists, I always say, get it out of your head and onto paper or on digital, whichever way works for you. And when you're carrying all these things around your head and you're thinking through, oh, I need to do this and then I need to do that, and that's very, that takes over a lot of your brain space. So if you can get it out into a format that it's there, you can let go of it a little bit in your brain, because it's documented somewhere and you can refer to it. So you can give yourself a little bit of a breather. But I always tell people the thing about to-do lists, and what people don't do, and they should, is they don't prioritize their to-do lists. So I tend to tell people to color code. It's just the easiest way. And sort of mark out your priorities. What are the urgent things that must be done? What are the things that would be great to have done, but aren't necessarily, you don't have to have them done that day? And what are the things that are just there because you're hoping to get to them at some point, but you might not? And if you're having like a bad day, like if you've got up and things have all gone wrong, you can look at your list and see what has to be done and ditch the rest. We have to sort of be gentle with ourselves. I think as business owners, we have to be realistic. You see people with these to-do lists and you think, you're never going to get that done, never. And all you're doing is setting yourself up there for failure, to be like, oh, I didn't get this done today, I have to move it to the next day. Be realistic and prioritize and make sure you know what has to be done. And those are the things that you focus on first.
So Jared will say to me on a Sunday evening, what are you doing tomorrow? And I'm like, I have no idea. I wrote a list, but it's it helps me because it's out of my head, as you said. Yeah. But I do think that I always start at the easy thing.
Yes, we do.
And then end up the hard thing that was annoying me is still not done.
Yes. Well, I don't know if you've ever heard of Parkinson's law, but Parkinson's law says that a task will expand to fit the time that you give it. So if you say you have 2 weeks to get something done, it'll take you the 2 weeks and you'll probably do it in the last hour before the deadline. But if you said you had 5 days to do the same thing, you'll get it done in the 5 days. So give yourself deadlines that work for you and aren't just a case of like making it take as long as possible, to get it off your list. And another good tip as well for that is to put times against your to-do list. So against each task, sort of estimate how long it will take you. And then that can be a really good way if you get like a little pocket of time, if you finish up early with a client or it's like 10 minutes to lunchtime, you can have a look down and say, right, well, that task only takes 5 minutes. I've got 10 minutes before lunch. I'll just get that done. That's it off the list. And I think sometimes when you don't have timings against it, you make things seem bigger than they actually are. So be honest with how long it would take you. And then when you have little pockets of time, mark things off that way.
And I know we haven't this on the list to talk about, but what about distractions, Amy? I get distracted by, even now when I'm on Zoom with you, there's like my phone is dinging dust and, the man was at the door, the delivery man, and my emails were popping up and all. Like, I feel frazzled even on this call because I'm thinking of all the million things I have to do when we get off. Is there any tips for business owners in relation to distractions?
Well, what I did before I came on this call, I use all Apple devices, so it's probably a little bit different if you're Android, but I put the do not disturb mode on, and there's also a focus mode on your iPhones as well, and so it just holds all notifications for a certain amount of time so that you can be distraction free. A lot of people put their phone into airplane mode when they're working on a project as well, so that they don't get all the notifications through. I think it's very different for each individual, depending on how they work. There are things like the Pomodoro technique. So Pomodoro is tomato in French or in Italian, sorry. And it was designed by a man years and years and years ago with a little tomato kitchen timer. And what it says is that you set the timer for 25 minutes, you work on your task for 25 minutes, and then you take a 5-minute break. Then you reset the timer and you do another 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break, and you do that 4 times before you take a longer break. And some people work really well like that. I actually did a lot of my studying at school using the Pomodoro technique without even realizing that's what it was. Just breaking it down into chunks. But it just depends on how your brain works. Like what works for one isn't going to work for another. So I think that's probably one thing I've learned in business over the last few years, is that you really have to listen to yourself, to your own body and your mind, and figure out what works best for you, and make sure that your business is set up to support that and not the other way around.
Yeah. And I have heard people using that technique with like 15-minute bursts of work.
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever works for you, as you say. If 25 minutes is too long, but you do actually be more productive when you focus like that and say, right, for 15 minutes, I'm not going to look at my phone or check an email. I'm going to focus on getting this proposal done. And that does work. So if anybody's struggling, maybe perhaps try and bring that technique into your working day, and get, even for the housework, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to load the dishwasher. I'm going to put a load of washing. I'm going to hang a load out, and I'm going to make the beds. And if you know you have to do that in 15 minutes, you can go around that house like Tasmanian devil. So I think if we started to do that in our workplace as well, and then if we just listened to all this and thought, do you know what, I can't cope, I need help. How we did talk about it at the start of the podcast, how do we find people like you, Amy? Because me and you had this conversation before where, like, I am sure you could work day and night for people, but you can't be all things to everyone. So, and I don't want anybody to steal you too much, because with so many projects. But how do people find people like you? Or perhaps, we'll talk about getting in touch with you at the end. But I mean, what you told us a wee bit at the start, just tell us again about that.
Yeah, so I would say if you're at the point of outsourcing, you kind of want to outsource before you actually need it. It's easier to get organized and get on board with somebody, when things aren't crazy busy and they're not dropped in at the deep end. We tend to do this sort of like reactively instead of proactively, which is unfortunate. But if a lot of people want to get really busy and want loads of clients, and I always say to them, if you got 100 new clients overnight, could you cope? And the answer usually is no, because they haven't got these systems and things in place. So the first thing to do is to do all of the things that we've talked about today. I always say take away before you add in. So make sure you've stripped everything back and everything is streamlined and efficient as you can possibly make it in your business. And what you'll generally find is that maybe allows you to take on one more client, or to add in another income stream that you haven't had time to do before, and give you that little bit more of a healthy budget in order to outsource. So if you've done all that first, and you're in the position to outsource, you would look at places like I've talked about there, the Society of Virtual Assistants, asking for peer-to-peer recommendations. And getting a VA that's right for you is a very individual thing. I always say it's like dating. You need to have somebody that has the same mindset as you, works in the same way, has the same long-term goals for your business, and is there as a business bestie, as I sometimes call myself, is there to support you. So the success of my clients' business is also the success of mine. I'm as invested in their business as they are. So finding somebody like that's really, really important. And once you've found who you think you're going to go with, communication is key. So discussing at the very outset, what are both of your boundaries, because they might not be the same and you might have to find some sort of compromise, like what are your hours of work? How are you going to communicate? Some people like email, some people prefer to use things like Slack or WhatsApp. Getting all of that agreed at the very outset is really important for a healthy relationship going forward. And keeping that communication open and honest is really important, so that you can continually review how things are going and make any adjustments where necessary. Because you have to remember, this business is your baby and you know it inside out, and somebody else can come in and support you with that because they're really good at the things they're good at. But you need to let them help you as well. And you need to understand that there is a little bit of a learning curve initially. And sometimes, as I said before, like taking that step back to take a step forward is really important. So you might have to slow down a little bit to help them understand things. That's where those mapped out processes really come into play, because if you've already got the documents that say, here's how I like this process done, here's access to those things and all of that, to hand that over makes things much, much easier. So that's what I'll say, like take away before you add in. Do all of that first and then bring somebody in.
Yeah, so just to give you an example, I wanted Amy to be able to log on to my Google Drive, access my documents, and then be able to edit them and forward them on to people that need them, like contracts and invoices. And I was like, I can't, first of all, I don't even know what my login is for Google, because that many Google Drives, and I couldn't even slow down enough. I kept WhatsApping Amy, as you know, Amy, sorry, but saying, Amy, I need you to help me. Oh, are you free to help me? She's like, yeah, no problem. But it was actually giving me anxiety talking, but I couldn't even get the time to figure out, this is terrible. This is the way business people are living right now. And it's do you know what and I've said this before, I kind of blame Zoom a wee bit, because Zoom leaves us very frazzled, because we're working. It's like you saying white space isn't bad. Actually, when you look at your diary and you're like, oh, there's a slot there, I could do 6 or 7 Zoom calls in a day. Whereas when that was face-to-face meetings, it was 2, maybe 3, no, probably just 2, let's face it. So now, and then I don't have time in between to catch up. And it's just you just feel like you're in a hamster wheel. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, I took half an hour one day, I figured out what my Google passwords were, what my email password was, created a document, a very basic one of what they are. And then I had a call for 20 minutes with Amy, give her all the logins. She logged in, which was on the phone. I told her what she needed to do. And I haven't heard from her since, just working away, I'd done it all. I can see all the transactions come back and forth. People's getting paid. She's updating me like with a WhatsApp or a document telling me what's been done. I am not joking you, that has changed my life, Amy. I know I'm not saying that like flippantly, like it's actually freed me up so much and made me feel less stressed. So I hope people listening that they realize they don't have to do it all themselves. And if they are doing it all themselves, they need to take a step back and maybe put some of these systems and processes in place so they feel less overwhelmed.
I always say, like, you want to scale sustainably. It's not just a case of like you want to get fully booked and grow and go viral and all of that. You need to grow or scale sustainably in a way that works. So getting all of these things in place first will allow you to do that.
And do many people have the years? Like, I mean, people are probably thinking, oh, that's a luxury I can't afford. But because it's on a freelance basis, actually you decide when and how you want it. But do many business owners do this?
Yeah, definitely. I think at the last count, there was about 6,000 VAs in the UK alone.
Wow.
And yeah, a lot of us are very busy. So yeah, no, there is a lot of business owners, and especially in places like London and things, it's actually a really big thing, because they recognize that they can get this specialist support without having to pay for pensions and sick pay and all the overheads that come with having an employee. And I'm not saying we replace an employee, but sometimes we're a bridging gap when you are no longer as small as you thought you were, but you're not yet at the point of wanting to take on actual staff and become an employer. We are a really good bridging gap to help you achieve that next level of growth, in order to set yourself up for growing a team or whatever it is you want to do next with your business.
Amazing. Unreal. If you had one thing, and I'm putting you on the spot, so I've never talked about this, one thing that you could tell anyone to do today to make their business life easier, is there anything that just steps out at you that you kind of hit mostly with business owners? Have you got
Stop checking your inbox.
Oh yeah, because we didn't really talk about that, didn't we not? Tell me that. Stop checking your inbox.
Yeah, so we have this thing where we think we're multitasking, but we're not multitasking. What we're really doing is swapping between tasks and not really being very productive. I always tell people, set a couple of times a day to check your inbox. And what you like, if you've checked your inbox in the morning and then you check it again later in the afternoon, you know, things have only had to wait a couple of hours. There's not, you know, they haven't had to wait several days. It's not that big a deal. You know, people can wait. If you'd have been in a meeting, you wouldn't have seen those emails anyway. So just check your emails a couple of times a day. Spend the time, have that in your diary where you have your email check-in blocked out, and action what you need to action, and just get it all done in one go. And don't, every time an email comes in, you're not like looking up to the corner of your screen going, oh, thinking about that, now I'm back into what I'm doing. Oh no, there's another email about that. That reminds me I need to make a phone call. You know, your brain just can't cope with that. So set a couple of times a day where you check your inbox. You can communicate that to people too if you're worried about it. You know, you can say, have an autoresponder set up to say, I only check my emails at such and such a time. I'll get back to you at my next check-in. And make sure everybody's on the same page. But yeah, people think that's a scary thing to do, and then they come back to me and be like, oh my god, that made such a difference. Didn't realize it would be such a difference, but it does.
I think we'd need to do that for WhatsApp too. WhatsApp.
Yeah,
isn't it? Like
your WhatsApps.
Yeah, until a certain time, then go through them all. My goodness.
Yeah.
So look, we could talk all day.
We could.
I just want to say thank you for everything that you've helped me with, both on a admin level and event management. Like, she helps me with all the big days out, and like, it doesn't matter what happens, models don't turn up, Amy sorts it all out, and changes the running order and directs everybody. You're absolutely amazing. And I just want to thank you for everything and for educating people now about how they also might benefit from having a virtual assistant. How will they find it? Because you do give a lot of great tips on your socials as well, Amy. So how do people follow you?
So I'm Vamos Admin on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
Could you spell that, please?
Yes, so it's VAMOS admin. So Vamos means let's go in Spanish, and my sort of ethos has always been let's go, let's find a solution, let's get things done. So that's where it came from. But yes, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.
Amazing. Okay, thank you so much, Amy. Don't be too cross with me when your phone and your emails go mental because of this. But I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge on the Digg podcast, and I will see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in to another week of the Digg podcast. In order for the podcast to grow, some people mightn't actually realise this, but it really helps if you follow the podcast or subscribe. So depending on what platform you listen on, if you could take 2 seconds out of your time and go and either subscribe on YouTube, follow on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, and that just helps the podcast rank higher, the algorithm, all the tacky things, but also helps me have a further reach, help more people, and I'll also be able to get more guests on the podcast too. So don't underestimate that little follow or that subscribe. I'd really, really appreciate it. I also love to hear if you found the podcast useful. So let me know on social, send me a DM on Digg for Success. And also, if you want a screenshot and share it with the rest of your audience, I will do my best to reshare that on social as well. I will see you all again next week. And until then, let's just keep taking those small steps every day to improving our businesses, but also just being happier, better people.